Welcome to VISTA Table Talks, the summer series. I'm Kim Chin, the Assistant National Director of the Up2Us Sports VISTA program. And today we are joined by Up2Us Summer VISTA Riley Woods, who is serving at Volo Kids Foundation in DC, and Margaux Rawson with Like Blaine Foundation in Philly, to discuss the challenges athletes face in sports from their personal experiences and their experiences working at their organizations this summer. Leading today's conversation is Tyree Beard, an Up2Us Summer Cohort leader who is also a coach and athlete. Tyree, please take it away.
Thanks, Kim. So the first thing I want you guys to do is introduce yourselves and tell everybody where you're from and what sports you play.
Yeah, so my name is Riley Woods. I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, where I still stay as a student at The Ohio State University. At OSU, I'm a player on the school's club tennis team. And like Kim said, I'm an intern this summer at Volo Kids DC, a nonprofit that offers free sports programs to kids in the area.
Hi, my name is Margaux Rawson. I'm from the Philadelphia area. I attend Cornell University, where I play D1 track and field. I'm a high jumper there. And this summer, I am at Like Blaine, a foundation where we work with young girls in sports and we teach them about leadership.
Okay, perfect. So let's just jump right into it. So what do you believe is the greatest challenge that most athletes face today?
That's a great question. For me, growing up, I feel like my greatest challenge was always just the time management and figuring out how to prioritize what I want, because as a student athlete, obviously you really care about your sport. Mine was tennis. Mm-hmm. So I was always on the tennis courts wanting to play, but at the same time, you have the competing, you want to be a kid and you want to go hang out with your friends. You want to go see movies and stuff. So I think the biggest challenge is just managing that time and figuring out how you can schedule your life. That way you're prioritizing and making sure you're meeting all your needs.
Okay.
I think it's a great answer, Riley. I would say that a big challenge is consistency. Like through all the years, like I've been running track for almost probably like 15 years. And I think it's hard on tough days, like going in and out at the gym, going to the track, like doing the recovery training, seeing your like physical therapy, like athletic trainers. Like it's hard being consistent all the time and doing things that other people aren't going to do. Because if you want to be the best in what you do, you have to be willing to do what others aren't. And that's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, I think it's definitely big on time management because, as a student athlete, people forget like you're still a student and you're trying to play at like the highest degree at a school. So, you still have to like take your test, you still have to go to class, you still have to do all of this stuff, and you're still expected to perform at your very best every single time you step up on the field or the track or the court. So time management is always a big thing too. Okay. So what are the challenges and the differences between team sports and individual sports?
I can start that one. I would say track compared to tennis, it depends with like doubles. But track can be is a very individual sport. But at least with a team it's a huge team, you can empower one another and cheer each other on. So while someone else is doing a race and you're not, you have your teammates cheering you on and supporting you, and you do those workouts together. So it's not very as individual as people think. And I think it still has that team aspect, and it creates such an environment and a community that you can't get anywhere else.
No, I really agree with that. I would like to echo with what Margaux was saying. I mean, you may be playing singles in tennis, but in high school, there's 7 players on varsity. There's 3 singles teams and there's 2 doubles teams. And even though you are by yourself, you might be playing your singles match. Like Margaux was saying, you have that team behind you. There's the JV team that's not playing that, is watching your match, cheering you on. And I think one of the big challenges with individual sports, especially with tennis, is just losing your confidence whenever you make a mistake, because there's not always those people around you to build up that confidence or keep your head in the game. And when you are able to extend kind of some of those team dynamics to tennis, you are able to avoid most of those challenges. You are able to stay confident. You're not as responsive to your mistakes. You don't get your head down. You don't get shaken up. But a lot of times when, I'm doing my own tournaments outside of my team for high school, you run into that a lot where it's you versus your opponent, but also you versus your mind, and those doubts start to trickle in and all that kind of stuff. And you lose your confidence. You don't believe that you can play. So I think that's a huge challenge that individual sports players face.
Yeah, and that plays into what Margaux said about being consistent and consistency too. So another question, I guess, would be like, when you feeling down on yourself, when you're not like feeling like you're consistent, how do you build that confidence back up, or how do you stay consistent?
It's a great question. And I think this also goes with what Margaux was saying with, being willing to go the extra mile, right? You're staying consistent, but it's not just staying consistent. It's being consistent when, you don't want to go to the gym and, you should go to the gym. And I think the team aspect can really make that easier. Like we just talked about with, you have a team behind you, they can push you. They know what you want to do. They know what your goals are, and they can be that kind of pushing force. But when you lack that, it is really difficult to stay disciplined. And I think just writing down your goals, making sure that you have an agenda and you're checking off each item is one way that has been motivating to me, because, I might be going to bed one night dreading to go to the gym tomorrow. But if I write down saying, I'm going to wake up at this time, I'm going to go to the gym, and, you get out of bed and you just take that one step, kind of makes the rest of the day easier.
Yeah, I totally agree, Riley. Having that plan, I'm not really wanting to do it, but I can see the bigger picture that, maybe I'm not so into it right now, but I want the end goal. And so I got to put in the work now to get there. I also think communicating with like coaches and teammates about maybe your feelings or issues or hardships you're going through at the time can really help spread that burden, I guess, if it's something you're really going through. That's what your team is for, to help you, and you're supposed to be a family in a sense and help each other out. So, yeah.
That's good. That's good. So we're talking about the challenges that athletes face. So the main thing I want to know is, what has been your biggest challenge as an athlete? This can be a game or a match, or just a match that, like, against a person like you couldn't get past, or anything like that. So what has been your greatest challenge that you feel?
I can start with that one. I would say for me, it happened my freshman year of college. My first track meet, college track meet, I ended up breaking the Cornell freshman record. And it was such a peak for me, and it was such an amazing moment, and I was on such a high. And for the rest of that season, I never got to that mark, but I kind of stayed around that area, like that height. And then my sophomore season just did not go nearly as well as I'd wanted at all. It kind of really not even plateaued. I felt like I was getting worse. And so it's kind of that mental battle where it's I'm so close to it, and I'm putting in all this effort, I'm doing everything right. Why am I not getting those same results? To the point where it's am I too focused on it, and it's putting too much pressure on myself? So I had to take a step back, using the summer, kind of just change perspective and work different muscles, and trying a couple of different things, taking a step back from high jump, kind of see the perspective. Because I think sometimes we get very caught up in it, and honestly it can get in our head. And so I think finding a balance where it's still fun, but you're still very serious about it is a fine line.
No, I agree. That's a really great answer, because it's not always perfect for us student athletes. I mean, we have really high highs, we have really low lows. And like Margaux was saying, just having that mindset to take a step back and reset and shift your perspective and reevaluate what you need to do is really powerful. And I think a lot of student athletes run into similar problems and similar challenges. And I guess I think mine's pretty similar myself. Going into my senior year of high school, my high school was undefeated. We were 17-0, and we were heading into the second to last match of the season. I was also 17-0, so I was riding a lot of highs. It was my best season yet. And our matchup was against a team that we should have beaten, an opponent that was good, but not necessarily to our level. And I was really struggling. I mean, it's just one of those days. You might be 17-0, but you can't come out and play perfectly every day. You just have bad days. And I think it's a big challenge for people to recognize the importance of that. And it was really tough for me to accept that loss, because, I went to the match. It was a close match, but I ended up losing. It hurt a lot. But at the end of the day, I can't be perfect. And I think that's a big challenge that people go into it with, especially people that find a lot of success, because you start to develop expectations around yourself, and there starts to be thoughts of that perfectionism of, every time I come out, people expect me to win 6-0, 6-0, or I have to be completely perfect. And it's just not realistic to have that mindset. So it's a challenge to kind of confront those experiences where you do fall short and you kind of plateau or get worse. But it's also a blessing in disguise because it shows you that you are still human and that, you're not always going to be perfect, and you can accept that and, process it, move on, and shift your perspective.
Right. It's just using those non-perfect moments to build confidence and to build you as a better person,
Love that, Riley.
So, yeah. So this kind of can flow into the next question. So were you guys ever involved in like any on the court or on the field team drama? If so, like what happened and how did you handle it?
So I think there was an instance, I guess, where my team, we had we were divided into two groups, jumpers all together, but there was like long jumpers and then there was high jumpers. And so we're all jumpers at the end of the day, but we train with different coaches because they're different dynamics and different technicalities. And so it kind of just became like more divided, and we'd already been so separated now that we were training in different groups, that it kind of became a little cliquey, and that someone was starting to just exclude people from certain things and, creating, I guess, traditions that only their group could be a part of. And that became an issue because as a team, you're supposed to include each other. You're supposed to support one another, and to just go out of your way and create this clique up on a team just felt like what we don't stand for, like wasn't our values. So this was like so I went out and like just communicated with this person, just talking like, I think this is affecting our team dynamic, and, this is going to affect not just on the field, but like off the field, like at the end of the day, we're all athletes who want the same thing. We have the same goals or similar goals, and we have to do that together. And this like clique that was being formed was preventing that. So I think it's just like communicating that issue and not holding it back or going behind your teammates back, but being upfront and expressing that and strengthening the foundation that you guys all have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great leadership too. Just, being willing to confront the problem you see going on and being willing to communicate with that. So I really like how you handled that. Mine's very similar too. I didn't have anything like too specifically, like there wasn't a ton of drama on the tennis team, but like I was saying, it can be frustrating out there, especially when you don't perform your best. And I was team captain, so I was always looked to as the leader when something's going wrong or, someone's having a problem. And, the situations I remember the most are when my teammates were like having meltdowns on the court. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty for it, but it happened a lot more often than you would expect. And it's, just kind of like Margaux was saying, you just want to be communicating that support system for them, being that foundation, letting them know that you're going to be there for them and creating that kind of sense of identity as a team of just being supportive and being a positive foundation for people, because there can be a lot of on-court drama when you're playing tennis matches, you're playing opponents that you don't necessarily like or you have rivalries with. And it's important to communicate with your teammates and make sure that you're all staying focused and not letting that drama affect how you play on and off the court.
Okay. And dealing with those on the court and even off the court dramas, how did your coach help any, or did it hinder like the team dynamics? Especially to you, Roddy, since you were a team captain. So how did you go about, being a team captain and handling those situations did the coach help, or did the coach hinder your, the dynamic?
Yeah. That's a great question. And I think it's important too, because to answer or to talk a little bit about the importance of coaches, because a lot of people respond differently to different coaching styles. And my team had two tennis coaches, and while I loved both of them, they were great coaches, I responded really well to one coach. So when I would have my own meltdowns or I would get frustrated, I would only respond positively to one of my coaches coming and calming me down, just because of the relationship we had and the way he responded to me. And I think it was also important to recognize how others would respond to that, right? Like some people wouldn't necessarily like me coming to them and talking to them. Some people wouldn't like this one coach. So it's a matter of having that awareness, knowing who's the right person to talk to this person. So the coaches were heavily involved with a lot of people that, that we identify, we say, oh, this guy really, really likes when the head coach comes and talks to him and gives him some tips and talks him down. And a lot other students like having the assistant coach come and talk to him because he's not going to give them as much game advice. He's just going to talk to them about what's going on in their mind and stuff like that. So the coaches were heavily involved too. And it wasn't just me doing anything. And a lot of the other students who weren't necessarily team captain were also involved too. If you had a friend group on the team and someone was struggling, you would go to that friend group and say, hey, it's your time to step up and make sure that he's getting out of his head. He's focusing on the tennis match. So, so everyone's always involved. It really was a great foundation that we had set up, and the coaches are a lot to thank for that.
Yeah, I agree with Riley. I think that as a team, like coaches are part of that team, and they're definitely people respond differently. So I think it definitely depends on the personality or how people respond to like different power dynamics and power distances from coaches. So I think it definitely depends on the situation.
So what are some of the mental barriers you have to push past in your sport? Because, tennis and track and field are two like very different sports. So what are like some of the mental barriers? And maybe there is some overlap.
Yeah, well, like I was saying earlier, you come out on the tennis court and it's a 1v2 match. You're playing your opponent, but you're also playing your own mind. And I think the scary thing is that you know what your opponent is capable of, but you never know what your mind is capable of. And it can be a friend and it can be an enemy. And that's the biggest barrier of, if you get really nervous, you kind of overthink your swings and you get really tight. Your arm doesn't move the way you want it to move, or you kind of lose, if you miss a couple balls in a row, you lose confidence. You say, oh, I can't hit that shot anymore. And like, there's a big barrier for me where I would go out to a tennis match one day. My forehands would be amazing, but I would miss a backhand. And the rest of the match, I would say, oh, I can't hit my backhand. I can't trust that backhand. And the next match, I come out and my backhands are amazing and my forehands are weak because I come in and I think, I can't hit a forehand, but I can hit my backhand. So it's that mental barrier of getting in your head and kind of overthinking it, making yourself tight in particular situations when just because you make one mistake doesn't mean you can't trust that shot, because like I said earlier, you're not going to be perfect. So a big mental barrier is that just lack of confidence that you get from your mistakes.
I totally agree, Riley. I think in the situation with high jump, I felt sometimes when I would go out and compete and there was someone I knew whose stats were maybe better than mine, I would literally get in my head before I even jumped that, they're going to beat me. Like, there's like, not that why don't I not try, but like, I know I'm not going to beat them. But that's just not a good way to think. You're already losing the battle and it's not even started. So I just started like, like high jump, it's anyone's race, like you can have a bad jump, you can have a bad backhand one day and the next day, like it's great. The same thing goes with high jump. Like every day is different and every jump is different. And just because that person jumped something last week does not mean they're going to jump it this week. And just because you didn't jump that well last week does not mean you're not going to go out and have a personal best. So just that confidence that you've put in that work, you've been consistent and you've been disciplined, that you're so capable, and believing that we don't even know what we're capable of yet, like until it happens. So I agree. It's all about confidence.
So we talked about the mistakes and the mistakes that you make during like the match or the game. So how do you come back from those mistakes? Some people do their game, and then as soon as they make a mistake, they think, oh, I got to go right back to the gym the first chance I get. Or some people after the game, they meditate. So like, what was your thing to come back from those mistakes?
For me, it kind of depends on the situation. There's been like meets where I totally just didn't do how I wanted to do, and after the meet's over, I'm out there jumping again. I'm out there training again because I didn't like how it went, and I know I can do better. But then there are days where it's like, okay, I need space. I need my time to think this over, to watch my jumps, to figure out where did I go wrong, make a list of what I can work on, and bring that and discuss that with my coach. So sometimes I do it myself. Sometimes I collaborate with my coach and my teammates, like, what do they think? How can I work on this? So it's really depends, I guess. But either way is the right way.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very situational. So I think, at least in regards to what Margaux was saying, with sometimes you need space. Sometimes you need to go just take a day off and think about it, shift your perspective. Another time, you know what you did wrong and you keep training. You have your coach stick videos so you can notice what you're doing wrong, how you can perfect your technique. So I think that's a really great answer. And another thing for what I noticed with tennis is just not letting those little mistakes get to you, right? And we've talked about it a lot. You're not going to make every jump. You're not going to make every backhand. And it's just recognizing that and having that frame of mind to know, you can't do everything perfectly every time. Even if you try your best and you do the best you know how to do, sometimes you fall short of what you wish you could have done. And it's just remembering that and willing to keep going forward. If I'm losing the first set of a tennis match, if I lose at 0-6, it's in the past, it's done. I need to move forward. Maybe I missed 20 backhands in that set, but I got to keep moving forward, trusting myself and making sure I'm playing. And it's easier said than done, obviously, but it is a huge perspective thing. And I definitely know that when I started my freshman year, I had a hugely different perspective than I did when I finished my senior year. My freshman year, whenever I would make a mistake, it'd be the end of the world and I couldn't come back. And when you start to grow and you mature and you realize that frame of mind with perspective and how you can't be perfect all the time, I think that's a big advantage too, and how you can learn from your mistakes and respond to them, because you're going to make mistakes. And best case scenario is, like Margaux said, you take more tape and realize what you did wrong, and next time you show up, you can do a little bit better.
One or two perfect answers for sure. Okay, so the last question is, what advice would you give someone looking to become a student athlete?
I think this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning with that time management challenge. Just making sure that you are coming in with the right mindset, knowing that you're going to meet the goals that you want to have set for yourself. So it's important to ask yourself, if you want to be a student athlete in high school or even college, it's, what do you want to get out of it, right? I had a big decision to make whether or not I wanted to train to go to college to play tennis. And so, when I was a sophomore in high school, it was a big challenge for me to figure out, do I want to sacrifice some of my school, some of my time with friends to train enough so that way I can get into college? And for me personally, I was content just playing club tennis my entire college career. So I decided, I'm still a student athlete, but I don't want to be dedicated that much to that extent. And I think that's always the fundamental question of, what do you value more, and can you develop a schedule that allows you to meet all the needs that you want and to reach all the goals that you have set?
Yeah, that's a great answer, Riley. I totally agree that, being a student athlete is a huge commitment, and it's very time consuming and it's really hard. But I would have not changed anything about it. I love being on the team that I'm on. And my advice would be, if you're gonna commit somewhere, especially at like such an intense level, find somewhere that it's not so much of a sacrifice. Like, you want to be around these people, you want to go to practice, you want to do this. Like, the team is the most important. Your coaches, like, they should become your family. And I'm very lucky that's how it became for me. You walk into our like training room and our energy is different than any other team on the field. Like, we get compliments about that our energy is just different. We connect different, like, we are such a family, and I'm so grateful for that. And that is the biggest advice I can give to someone, because you don't want to get to college and you're 2 years in, you're like, I hate my sport. I hate my sport. That
Exactly.
is like, so, and I've heard people say that, unfortunately, they're like, oh, my coach, like, doesn't understand, I don't even like my teammates, or something about it. Like, you lose interest, you lose the love of that sport because of other people. So if you can find a sport that you love, and you can do it with people that you love, that people encourage you and support you, you will win every single time.
So, Margaux, how did you find like that environment that was a perfect fit for you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I didn't really get to pick them. That's my team, like, um, Cornell reached out to me about competing for the track and field team. And honestly, I kind of just like went with it. I was like, yeah, like that. Why wouldn't I want to do this? And I
Mm-hmm.
just got really lucky. We, and I think a lot of it honestly is that we train men and women together. Like we run together, like those terrible morning workouts, we lift together. So we kind of create that like bond and that connection where we don't just win together, we lose together, we do it all together, hard days, good days, we support each other. A lot of us have classes together. So we're on the field, off the field, like supporting one another. After morning workouts, we'll all go get brunch together, like on campus. We'll do movie nights. We make an effort to be friends, which I think is important. And we know that we can come to each other if we're going through it, if we're struggling. We're not that just there for the good times. We're there for the highs and the lows, which I think is crucial and really makes or breaks a team.
I love that answer.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you guys both for coming. And thank you for your
having
time.
us.